welcome to an amazing edition of Mind, Body, and Soul today. I am super, super excited to be talking to two extremely talented people, Tez Ilyas and Rabia Chaudry. We're going to be here to discuss Tez's new book, The Secret Diary of a British Muslim, aged 13 3/4. Yay, you have the same book. For those who've been living underneath a rock, Tez Ilyas is a Pakistani British comedian who's also an actor and a writer. He's done many productions, including Thursby, The TEZ Talks show, and the Sky comedy special, Christmas Shorts. For American, oh, it's okay. You can, well.
I was going to say Man Like Mobeen, but I thought I'd cut you off.
Oh, it's okay. I was getting to that bit because you know why?
That's why I stopped.
Yeah, no worries. And for the American audiences who haven't been lucky enough to see, these other productions and see Tez on stage, which by the way, he's hilarious, you may recognize him as 8 from Man Like Mobeen. So going to, Rabia, the amazing Rabia Chaudry, who's a British, sorry, Rabia, not British.
You wish, Solid.
See, everyone's British right now. Sorry, I'm going to go back to that. Who's a Pakistani American attorney, New York Times bestseller author of Adnan Story, and executive producer of HBO's The Case Against Adnan Syed, and the producer of the podcast Undisclosed, The Hidden Gin, and 99, which by the way, I love this. Like Tez, Rabia has a memoir coming out next year, which I'm super excited about, called Fatty Fatty Boom Boom. I know it's hilarious.
It's so funny.
Having Rabia and Tez here together is serendipitous because I first met Tez at the premiere for Rabia's documentary in London. So thank you guys for being here. And going back to the people you actually want to hear from. Tez, how's it going? The last time I saw you was on the Wicked tour, and
yes.
Has it been going since then?
Really, really good. So it's good to see you outside Edgware Road, and having shisha and food with your lovely sisters. That was a lot of fun. That was a very fun evening. But yeah, I'm really good. The Wicked tour actually just finished last night, so it was my last tour show last night. So 46 dates done, and
COVID?
yeah, alhamdulillah,
46 COVID dates.
46 COVID dates, yeah, and just done. I feel like the tour's finished at a really good time because I feel like this Omicron, Omegatron, whatever you want to call it, this new variant is going to be a problem. So I feel like the tour's finished at a very, very good time for me. Very selfishly, I always think about myself in these things, and I'm like, well, at least I got my tour done, guys.
I know. So where was the last tour date?
I was in Manchester last night.
Oh wow.
Manchester, UK, not Manchester, wherever. Manchester by the sea.
New England.
Yeah. Manchester, wherever Manchester by the sea is set. New England. It's not there. Old England, guys.
Yeah, back home.
Yeah.
So Rabia.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I can jump in whenever you want me to get started.
Oh, please go ahead and jump in.
So first, let me say that it's hard for me not to call Tez Tez because I'm such an auntie. I want to call him Tez Ilyas. But I gotta ask, is that what it really refers to, Tez Ilyas, and not Tez as a is it because Desis call you Tez?
Well, here's the weird thing.
Yeah.
No one at home calls me Tehzeeb or Tez. So my mum's puppo, so my mum's aunt, so my great aunt called me Tehzeeb. That's what ended up on my birth certificate. My mum.
Name, yeah.
My mum hated it.
Oh.
So she just adopted the name Tahir or Ter, which she says in her dialect.
Ter, yeah.
And that became Terry. So everyone at home growing up calls me Terry.
Crazy.
Or Terry, as you'd say, if you weren't a freshie. So everyone calls me Terry here. And to the point where my uncles in Pakistan, my mum's brothers, didn't realize that my real name wasn't actually Tahir, it's Tehzeeb, until I showed them my passport and they blew their minds. So Tehzeeb is like my government name, and Tahir is like my name at home.
This is why like white governments cannot get their arms around Muslims, because we have our date of births are never right on the birth certificates, on the passports, our names are never right. But it's totally also Punjabi. I know you're Punjabi, a Punjabi thing to have like all these nicknames, because at home I'm Bobby. Nobody calls me Rabia. I'm Bobby. My sister, who is Sidra, is Lily. Like all my cousins are Mona, Cookie, Raja.
Yeah.
Nobody knows anybody's real names. But anyway, let me say, first of all, I love the book. I love it.
Thank you.
Really, really, it's so good. And I actually feel intimidated because now I've read your book and I've read Wajahat's memoir, Wajahat Ali's memoir, which is coming out soon. And you guys have these kick-ass memoirs coming out, and mine's gonna suck. But
not all. I don't believe that for a second.
I'm just a fangirl. And so when Surat asked me to do this, I was so excited because when I got to meet you, I was losing my mind in London. I couldn't believe you were coming to the documentary premiere. That's the first time I met you. Because I watched you on TV on Man Like Mobeen, which is one of my favorite shows of all time.
We would have discussions about it, right, Rabia? About how funny.
Oh my God, it was such a great night. So thank you for coming out and supporting us there. But I want to get into the book because I want people to buy this. People here in America to buy this book. The book was just released in October, right?
In the States, yeah.
Okay, when was it released in the UK?
On my birthday, the 8th of April.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a nice timing.
So you've been kind of managing. Have you been doing a book tour along with like your stand-up tour?
No, so we wanted to originally do a book tour, but because COVID just ended up extending because it's a selfish guy, we ended up not doing a book tour in the end. So we did a virtual book launch. Okay. And then I've been going around some towns and just impromptu signing some copies in bookshops and letting people know in that town, like, hey, by the way, there's like 4 signed copies that I just signed and whatever. And then I've told people to bring whatever. So I put to bring the books to the stand-up show, and I do little meet and greets at the end. And so I agreed to sign anyone who brings a book, I'll sign it for them. Okay. My book, not like Harry Potter. Like don't bring any book, just my book specifically.
Well, I was going to ask you, when you drop in the bookshops and you're signing the books, do you actually ask somebody, just like go on back there and just...
Oh yeah, no, I ask someone because otherwise it just looks like vandalism. I do ask someone, and people who work in bookshops are always so enthusiastic and they get really excited because like a quote unquote author has dropped in, and they're like, oh my God, yes please, and they have like really nice posh pens and stuff that they lend you. So it's quite sweet.
Not quote unquote. You're an author. You got to own it. It took me a while to own it, but now it's in my bio. So you're an author now. And I am, first I want to ask you this. Why did you want to write this book? Like, is this something you've always wanted to do? Or it would just feel like a story you needed to get out of your system?
I wish it was as profound as that. It was COVID hit. And these publishers that I was talking to about a different idea. I had this idea to write a book called Islam for Infidels, which is essentially a dummy's guide to Islam with a provocative title. And we were going back and forth on what that idea could look like. And then the team that was talking to me, the leadership changed, and this new lady came in and she looked at the project, looked at me, looked at the stuff that I did. And she came to us with the proposal of writing my teenage memoirs. And I'd never thought about it before that, right? So this is like March last year, and I sat on it for a couple of days, and I thought it was a really good idea. So we went back and forth on deciding on what it could look like, and then we did a virtual handshake, and I started writing it. I think it was June last year. I started writing it. Yeah.
Wow.
Did you actually have a diary to like refer to? Because your memory can't be that good.
I actually didn't. So there's a lot of raking, like scraping the barrels of your own memory.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because in the original Serial, in the very first episode, what's her name, the host of Serial?
Sarah Koenig.
Yes, Sarah Koenig. I think it's in the first 5 minutes of the very first episode of Serial, she talks about memories.
Yeah.
And how, because about Said's case specifically, and how unreliable they can be and how much you actually forget it. And I really thought about that when I was scraping the barrels of my own memory banks, thinking there are so many things that I must have forgotten. But I remember the big headlines, right, in your life. And then my sister's got an amazing memory. Speaking to my mum, my dad, my cousins, and that just gave me a more rounded picture. And then going on Wikipedia and just Wikipediaing every major event that happened between 97 and 2001 when the book is set. And there's things that come back to you like, oh yeah, I remember when such and such happened, or the Bosnia War, or whatever.
Right.
So all these things come back to you, which like just paint a brighter picture of that time. And there's some things you exaggerate, right? So like there's a lot of dialogue in the book, which is completely made up because I do not remember exactly what we would have said. So I'm guessing what we would have said.
There was a lot of custom.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do it in the voice that I would have spoken as a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was custom, bro. Custom, bro.
Well, I wanted to actually ask you about that. I mean, the book, I mean, it's one thing to write, to have language in a book where like it's kind of hard to get around it. For example, language that's tied to like Islamic language that's like let's say you're right, use like Quran or Ayatul Kursi or namaz. Those things maybe you want to put, but you beyond that, like everyday colloquial language you use like as you would be speaking, as your family would be speaking and friends. And I'm wondering, was that first of all, I want to know your editor was okay with that, because there's a lot of it, which means for a reader who doesn't understand it as they're going along, they're gonna be referring to the back. And I've dealt with editors who'd be like, oh no, heck no, you're not doing that. You got to make it easier. But I love the choice because I stay immersed in the story that way, and it just gives me, because I know the language, I can totally get a sense of what's actually happening in that scene. But what did you kind of think about when you thought about audiences that might not get it?
I wanted to give my readers a bit of credit because look, we live in a time where there are so many cultural phenomenons around the world. You got Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, etc., Lord of the Rings, and there are communities that learn these brand new made-up languages.
Entire worlds
and pronunciations that I look at these words and I'm like, why can't I pronounce Daenerys Targaryen? If I look at a Polish name, or maybe a white person looks at an Arabic or an Indian name, they're like, oh, I don't know how to get my head around this. But you can pronounce Daenerys Targaryen and name her 7 titles that she's got. So I was like, if they can make an effort for fiction stuff, they can make an effort for non-fiction stuff as well.
I love it. I love that you're taking it head on like that. And it's totally true. It's like we are constantly trying to accommodate, right? Like for other, instead of making people do just a tiny little bit of work and just flip a page and figure it out.
Exactly. I mean, one of my favorite shows is Family Guy, and Family Guy constantly cut away to references.
Yeah.
Probably about 20, a quarter to a third of them I don't really get.
Yeah.
But I get that there's a joke there. And so I don't worry about the ones I don't understand. And I'm like, well, I get the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't matter that I don't get every single reference they're trying to tell me.
Yeah.
I was going to say, sorry, Rabia, go ahead.
No, so go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm not a native Punjabi speaker, but I mean, a lot of the words I did get, but some of them I didn't get. There was some, you even mentioned in the book, there's references, words that you cannot translate into English. They just don't make sense, right? So, yeah, I used the glossary a lot at the back, which I thought was amazing. So I'm sure you had a good time, like going through and doing a quality check on that and making sure you got all your words and all the definitions down. And the other thing which I really loved about is the, just the background information that you give. You start off with the family tree, right? And every person in your book, you give them, how they're related to you, or what role they played in your life, which was really good. I mean, at the beginning I tried to go through the list and I'm like, okay, this isn't going to make sense. So throughout the book, and you have a lot of friends that begin with S, it seems, right? So I was getting confused with Shahid and everything, so I'm going like I went to the front to look it up, which was great. It was very easy to read, and the same with the glossary. And I loved your like little notes at the bottom, that they were really hilarious to read on the diary entries.
Thank you.
No, definitely. That list of characters, or the cast, as you put it in the front, I also thought was like kind of an in your face. Like, listen, this is you. If you're entering my story, you're gonna have to like accept the challenge of getting to know all these people to some extent or the other. Whereas so many other writers would have made the choice to not scare people like that, where you're like up front, my chacha, dadi, nana, you're gonna know them all, and you're gonna have to deal with it, and you will actually be fine. I'm
part of this, Robbie. Coming from an Asian background, if you leave one person out of your story, they will never let you forget it for the rest. To your grave, they will never let you forget it. They'll be like, yeah, I've got my tumors come back as really aggressive. Yeah, but remember you left me out of your book. Oh, well, thank you. Okay, thank you for reminding me about that.
Yeah,
so everyone gets name checked at least one time.
I didn't even
Robbie, you need to remember that.
I didn't even think about the fact that you had to like answer to the family on that list. I love it. But let me ask you this. I also wanted to ask you about the decision to start start this memoir at the age of 13 and 3/4 and ending it at like 18 or 18 and a half, maybe. Like, why that time frame?
So the actual title came from a very, very popular children's book called The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole, aged 13 3/4. It's kind of a parody on that, the title first of all. And then I thought, actually, that's probably quite a good time to start the story. And I wanted to, because that's kind of when you start changing your body, you know, as a young man, your body changes, your attitudes change, you sort of slowly start morphing from, you know, a young boy into sort of an older boy into kind of a young man. And so those are very interesting years to focus on just any young person's development, I think. And then 18 and a half was, that is the day I went to university to start a brand new chapter in my life. And coincidentally also happens to be the month that 9/11 happened, which again for Muslims started a brand new chapter for us across the world and definitely in the West. So I thought it was quite an interesting point to stop the book, because yeah, after that the world changes. The world changes for me personally, and in a more bigger way as well. So it was quite a nice coincidence that coincided for me.
Given the impact that 9/11 had on Muslims everywhere, all around the world, a lot of Muslim writers have made the choice to begin their memoirs around that time, like, you know, how they were impacted by that. So I thought that was a really interesting choice. But one of the things I loved about the format of this book, and clearly, you know, I didn't expect for a second that you're taking like your literal diary entries and just typing them up and giving, that you actually have to recreate like what happened, is that what you've done is like the cardinal rule in writing is showing instead of telling, right? Like, so you don't have to explain to people how it felt to XYZ or what the experience was like, because they're in it with you. I think it's such a brilliant way to showcase like the experience of growing up, like, you know, as a British Muslim, what some of the political things, how they were impacting you, even though they're global, how they're impacting you locally, the references, like the racism that you guys are, that British Muslims specifically were experiencing at the time. So I thought the format was brilliant for that. And at the same time, it was so funny. I laughed out loud many, many times, at least once every chapter, probably. And they're
Thank
chapters,
you.
but it was great. I want to start by talking about your family. It's quite a family. And it's, I would say, and maybe the experiences, first of all, there's a little bit of a generational difference. Like I'm older than you. I grew up not surrounded by Muslims, not around a lot of family. Like we grew up in rural small town America where we're like the only brown people. I have no idea. My experience of growing up around like lots of Muslims, like I have no idea what that's like. And I love reading about that. But was it unusual to have a family like yours, where parents have been divorced, where like they've been remarried, where, I mean, like in my experience, it would have been unusual back like growing up. Now it's much more common, but not when I was a kid. Yeah,
it was super unusual for me growing up. I remember feeling like, and it's right, infant school, high school, middle school. I don't know. I don't know what the right terms are. I don't know how it corresponds to you guys, but you know, like probably up to university when I started making more white friends, I barely knew anyone whose parents were divorced. And that, you know, growing up, there is a sense of shame that comes with that. No one ever said anything, but there's sort of like, you just feel different. I don't feel like that now, of course, but when you're younger and everyone's super self-conscious and really worried about what other people think about them and stuff, I always felt a bit of a kind of a sense of shame about that. Because it wasn't something that anyone else had to really deal with, or it didn't seem like anyone else was dealing with. And now, of course, you're older and you understand everyone's got their own issues at home. No one's families are perfect. Some parents probably should be divorced, to be honest. And so these are all things that you learn in hindsight and with your own experiences.
And other parents have secret families you never know about until you grow up.
Of course, yeah, you hear these mad stories as well. So yeah, it was definitely a unique upbringing that I had in comparison to my peers, my cousins, friends at school and everything.
So actually, I wanted to say, I really wish, I mean, I know it's really impossible and you can't go back in time and everything, but I really wish your book was around in the 60s, because my dad, just like you, parents divorced, and in the 60s is really unheard of, right?
That would have been even rarer.
Two separate, sets of parents, two separate. And, you know, I always joke around about the number of half brothers and sisters my dad has. And, you know, not only that, you know, just having someone that he could at that time relate to. Being British Pakistani is a unique experience in itself. I'm British Pakistani. And, but even though you and I both grew up in England, there was a lot of overlap, like a lot of things you said, oh my God, I thought, oh my God, I could have wrote this. You know, it's so similar to my story. But the other things, especially, and I don't know if this is a girl boy thing kind of thing, but the whole theme of racism and the riots. I mean, I don't really, you know, get exposure to that in London, and especially, you know, when the Stephen Lawrence murder happened, I remember that being like horrified. I mean, it was closer to me in London and everything, but I've never had like firsthand experience like you have. And, you know, in my life, the first time I got called Paki was after 9/11 in America. I don't even think I realized I was Pakistani until I came to America. I mean, if you know what I mean, because there's so many brown people where I grew up. So I found it really interesting to see that even though we were both in England, you had such a different experience in, you know, the northern part.
Yeah. It was quite, it was interesting. I think after a few years, I kind of ended up like sugarcoating what life was like pre 9/11. Like it was this all rainbows and unicorns and life was perfect. The world was perfect. And then when I was like interrogating my memories and speaking to friends and stuff about what actually life was like for us in the 90s, actually like these problems existed. Like 9/11 exacerbated issues, but these issues already existed. And then going back, I'm like, oh yeah, we had 2 race riots in my school, which is more than the music teachers we had at the school. Like it's just crazy. Like that we just went through. I mean, accepted it as normal. Like, oh yeah, that happened at school yesterday, didn't it? Wow, mad. All right, go off to maths we go. So it was just, yeah, the sort of things that you accept when you're in them is crazy.
Yeah. And I also think part of the reason 9/11 stands out is because in many ways, I think all of these experiences, and I had, you know, my experiences with racism growing up in America. Like I said, I grew up in small town America. It was few and far between, frankly. So you end up writing it as a one-off, as not the norm, as not really how society operates. And also maybe naively thinking that, you know, these big white supremacist governments, you know, they're really just trying to do the right thing. They don't, you know, and then, but 9/11 put it in our face, right? 9/11 was like, there's no way to escape what's really happening now. It was like suddenly the mask came off and it was like, oh, these are not one-offs. There is like a concerted devaluing of brown life that has and black life, and that has always happened, and these military aggressions have always, but this is like an unapologetic in your face aggression after 9/11, where, you know, and of course in this country Trump has made it worse now, where he's like, all the gloves have come off, and I think that was why 9/11 felt like such a turning point. But 9/11 comes at the end of the book, and I want to talk about that, but I also want to ask you, one of the things that I loved, which was hilarious, and Solat and I talked about this, was your entry like early on in the book for Tuesday, April 15th, because it rings so true for us. And these are all the rules that we have to follow as Muslims.
The big list of rules?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I feel like you could do a whole, I don't know if you have done it, but a whole comedy special just around these, maybe like they're all worked in. And of course, as girls, females, Solat and I had additional rules to all this.
You know? Sure.
So Solat, you want to talk about some of the rules, some of your favorite rules here?
The favorite rules about, you know, about the whole namaz thing. And actually, you know, let me get the book right now and go through the list in front of me. But you can start off first.
Page 32 in the book. Eat with your right hand, write with your right hand.
Oh yeah.
But there's certain things you don't do with your right hand.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up thinking, this is ridiculous. Like, I was left-handed as a child. And
my sister was left-handed, and my stepdad forced her to write with her right hand.
Yeah. And honestly,
crazy.
As an adult, I'm like, I have seen nowhere in any scripture, any book, any hadith, any tradition that we have to write with our right hand. I understand.
No, you don't.
You don't. Yeah, you don't, right? Like, so, I mean, but it was so arbitrary as kids. And it was also kind of like, as if it wasn't hard enough to learn and to be in school and to be very different than other kids, then you have to like force yourself to do something that's completely unnatural for no reason. Don't talk back. Don't talk when you're eating. Don't talk. Oh man. I mean, the rule of like, especially with guests over, like you're seen and not heard. My God. And that's something I've had to kind of deprogram myself with my own kids. Cause I'm an auntie. Like I was raised with that. So I'm surprised when I see my girls, my kids hanging out with my friends and talking to them. I want to be like, get in the back room. You're not allowed to talk to adults.
I'm like this with my nieces and nephews. Like I'm constantly shushing them. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
But it's learned behavior, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So oh, sorry. I was going to say, now that I have the book in front of me so I don't mess it up. But yeah, going back to the whole reading namaz 5 times a day, as a child, you just read it and you never understand the context. And I thought that's not fair. Also, the whole, the not talking back thing, the not talking, well, I didn't have an issue talking to girls, but not talking to boys in my case, all of these things, I was just laughing. I felt like Muslim people, you already have kids. And then on top of that, Pakistani Muslim people have a whole bunch of lists that they need to memorize. And, it's tough.
And that is not an exhaustive list by any means.
Yeah, no. And, a lot of it is not even explicit. There are things we just know we cannot do and will not do. My parents never said, you are not allowed to talk to boys. I just knew it. I don't know how I knew it. I don't know how I absorbed the information. I just knew it. This one really makes me laugh. Don't touch dogs. Oh my God. I laughed at that one.
And the other one, don't eat sweets or chocolates or crisps in front of your little brothers and sisters. I mean, I had a lot of sisters, and I remember following that rule myself just because I didn't want to share.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. That's definitely part of it.
So I wanted to ask you, in the story, you also talk a couple of times about a couple of trips that you made to Pakistan. I know like this is outside of the book, but I want to know, do you still like travel to Pakistan? Are you really connected to your roots?
Yeah, I think the last time I went was 2017. And funnily enough, just before the podcast, the reason I was a couple of minutes late because my mum was finishing off telling me a story about how her brother, my Mamu Abbas, in the book, he just had a fight recently with one of his cousins over some land issue, and he got a bit physical. So she was telling me about that, and I'm like, this is hilarious, but also I've got to go and this literally happened over the weekend. So I'm still very well connected. Yeah, I think I might be going next summer again, which will be the first time in 5 years, but obviously depending on what's happening in the world and all those things.
Yeah. So when you go, where do you go?
Jhelum. I go to the village in Jhelum. So my mum's village and my dad's village are like a 15-minute walk distance. Okay. So Jangir, my dad's village, Bokan, my mum's village, and so that's where I go with the odd trip to like Islamabad or Lahore or something. But I feel like I haven't really explored Pakistan properly, and I'd really love to. I really love to, like, because I follow these like Instagram pages and Twitter accounts now, right, that showcase the beauty of Pakistan, and I'm like, your part of Pakistan, I'm sure my part of Pakistan is beautiful, but because I've been there so much, I probably take it for granted, right?
Right.
But I want to go to these places, the mountains, these lakes, Karachi, and all these places that look so amazing to travel to.
As an adult, when I've gone to Pakistan, I mean, I love it so much, and I just feel like there's like a part of my soul still there. My family's from Lahore. We don't have a village. I've always desperately wanted to see a village. So my family like moved from the big city in India to the big city in Punjab, in Lahore. And so I have no idea what that feels like. But I do remember when I went as a kid around the same age when you went, and it was like watching a show. It was like watching theater, all the different, because everybody's like a character, and you remember these characters and they become part of your stories. Is that how it felt for you? Like, did you just feel like this instant connection with all these people that you saw like 3 times in your life?
Yeah, it's weird because they spoil you so much, right? Like there's so much love from them towards you. And when you grow up, you kind of like, was there an agenda there? Possibly. But when you're younger, you don't think about these things, right? And you just get swept away.
And supposed to marry, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah. So when you're younger, you just get swept away by the love and the affection that you get from them. And when you're, especially with me, with probably my abandonment issues, which is the subtext of the book, which I don't explicitly say, I love that, right? I love getting spoiled by my uncles and then putting me in the back of their cycle or their motorcycle and taking me off to get a lollipop or whatever. I love that stuff. And so in your heart and your mind, you forge this deep love and bond for the people and the place. And I love it. And it's so different to my life here. It just feels like,
can you tell me
I
something?
feel quite blessed.
Can you tell me something that felt like cultural shock to you that when you went back as a kid?
Oh yeah, the first time going there and like, there's not like, I mean, bathrooms, right, are an issue.
Yes.
When you're there. I mean, it's changed now, but when you're younger, I remember the first time I'd have gone to Pakistan would have been in the 80s. So I'd have gone in like 86 and 89, maybe some around those times. And people were still going outdoors in the fields to do the number 2. And, that's using a rock as a whatever, to wipe themselves and stuff. So it's completely different time. And now things have changed. Yeah, there's indoor toilets and proper plumbing and stuff, but that came later. I still remember there was no electricity in the village past a certain time because like electricity shut off, and so they had the old oil lamps, right? So I remember like going through the village with holding my uncle's hand as he had the oil lamp in front of him, and that's like almost like Victorian time stuff. It was really, so that stuff like that it just stays with me that I got to live a small part of that life for a few weeks and months.
I think it's wonderful to be able to experience that, actually. You know what I mean? So, but I think one of the funniest stories to me, and maybe, I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but it was crazy to me, was when you took, I think, your elder sister on the back of a motorcycle. You just like, I'll take her to another village. You're a kid. You're just a kid who just gets and because you're a boy, they let you do it.
Yeah. 15
Even though you're
years
like,
old.
what, 14? How are you? 14 or 15?
I was 15 on that trip. Yeah.
And you're going to, do you even know how to get to the other village?
Yeah, I kind of know the way, and it's my sister's in-laws.
Yeah.
So she's going back to her husband, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take. Everyone's busy. I'm like, I'll take you. And so I just
okay,
get her
here's the keys.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And then he is the back of he just got her on the back of the motorcycle, and it just went off on these terrible roads. Wow. I threw her off.
Yeah,
I know, I've read that bit. That was hilarious. And what, for me, I really enjoyed you breaking down the Pakistani wedding ceremonies. And oh my God, I'm having a brain blank right now. But it was there was ceremonies that I haven't even heard of that seem very specific to, I guess, is it to your town or is it to Punjabi people or not? So, even for me, it was, I learned a lot. From
there's like Punjabi specific things that I think have come from like the mix of like old India they just carry on doing, because like some of these things like this is not Islamic, but it's part of our cultural traditions, and so people just carry on doing them.
I know which one it was. You hitting the groom or the groom.
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah. On the night of the Mendi, when they're walking, wherever they're walking from. And you just there going like in this procession, and you just get to beat up the groomsman from behind. And I'm like, what? You tell a 15-year-old child that is Christmas. What? And they can't do anything about it. Come on.
That's crazy.
Rabia, does your family participate in that tradition?
We have some rituals, but my mom, my parents became like Wahhabi, or my mother became like a Wahhabi back in the 80s in America when like Saudi Arabia took over all of our Islamic. So, I've had a rebellion against like kind of that idea of stripping away what's cultural, because Islam accommodates cultural differences. Like there's nothing, just because it's not just because the Prophet didn't do it doesn't make it haram. I mean, the Prophet did not zoom like we're zooming right now. I mean, like you can't turn everything into haram, halal. So so when I was growing up, when I got married, my sister got married, both of our marriages, both of mine and both of hers, my mother was very against all the rituals. This is a Hindu. And I'm like, but as an adult myself, I look forward to doing I think ritual is important. I think ritual is beautiful. I think it's meaningful and it connects people. And it has incredible, it leaves you with stories. And I love ritual. And so I plan on incorporating all the rituals back that the Wahhabis took away from us when the time for my kids.
Good.
But about that motorcycle story, this actually kind of highlights the kind of the male privilege, which you've pointed out a number of times in the book. About forget in Pakistan, even in England, how different it was for you versus like your sisters and the women in your family. Could you talk a little bit about that and why? Like, it's interesting to me that you even noticed that as like a 13, 14-year-old kid.
Yeah, I mean, no, I definitely noticed it. Just the fact that we were allowed to go out and do what we like, to a limit. We also had our own limits as well, but we were largely free to go out and play football with our friends and go off exploring and stuff and doing all those things that young people love to do. And the women in my family had a lot more. It's not like they were never allowed to go out, but it was a lot more prescriptive, a lot stricter. The things that they were allowed to do were a lot stricter. And I noticed that, and the fact that I did zero housework, after a while, you kind of be like, oh, this is a decent deal I've got here. And as much as guilty as you feel about it, when you're a child, if no one's forcing you to do chores, what child volunteers to do chores? I mean, not this one. And so you become conscious about that after a while. And then now in hindsight, you realize how unfair it is. And you like to think that hopefully the next generation does things a bit differently and they divide the chores more equally, and people step up and become, because the generation above us, like the fathers, never probably ever got involved in childcare and changing nappies and all that sort of stuff. But I'm guessing your husbands probably do, and I know that my cousins around me, the ones who are my age who got married, they do those things. Yeah. When their fathers never. So things are changing, and hopefully they'll continue progressing and changing for the better.
Yeah. So firstly, for the American people, nappies equals diapers. Just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all right. I can translate. But going back to the book, I really appreciated, just like Rabia pointed out, the way you, as a child, highlighting the sexism that women did face. And I also appreciated the homage that you gave to your mom. And in the book, you call her your hero. And I'm not going to give too much away, but your book, I expected it to be just like a very light-hearted book, but there was some parts in there that really made me feel for you. And I'm just like, wow, this is like raw. And to hear these experiences from 13 to slash 18-year-old showed maturity beyond your years. I'm like, he had to grow up fast. But the other thing I wanted to say was how much of wanted to ask, how much of an influence did your mom and sister have over your upbringing?
Massively. When I was a child, there was just the three of us, and we often said that was the golden era when it was just my mum, my older sister, and myself before the stepdad came into the picture. So yeah, massive influence. But again, like, Desi parents not massively prescriptive. Our parents don't sit us down and give us the rights and the wrongs and the do's and the don'ts. They give us the big headlines, but they don't really sit us down and give us their philosophy of life. And this is how I think life should be lived, and this is my views on a whole range of array of subjects. You kind of just pick things up, right? Like through osmosis, you kind of just realize these are the right things to do and wrong things to do. And often then you're relying on your friends or all the boys in your community, or would have been girls, I guess, in your cases, but all the boys in your community to kind of impart knowledge and wisdom on you, which is often very twisted and wrong. But in terms of like leaving things, talking in the book about things that were slightly darker and stuff, like I wanted this book to be real. I wanted it to be an authentic experience of what I went through. And I wanted to be very, very honest, because for right or wrong, whatever, people do look up to me as a role model, and people are aware of, and people might be curious about my life. And I want them to know that I've got to this position where you see me clowning around on TV and on stage and stuff. That doesn't happen by accident. These things, there were a lot of things that happened that impacted my life, that made me who I am. And a lot of them are very unpleasant. And we go through unpleasant things. There'll be people who are going through the things I've gone through in the book, and there'll be people going through worse things than I've gone through in the book. And I want them to know that life will be okay. They'll get through these things. As I say in the I've forgotten which surah it is, nothing bad lasts forever. This shall pass, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, after the hard times come good times. So yeah. So and also what you were saying before about wishing that there was a book like this in the 60s, right? I wish there was a book in the 90s that when I was growing up, when I was in school, about kids who grew up in the 70s and 80s that I could have related to. So this is for all the kids that are growing up now, it's for the kids who grew up around me, and it's for our parents' generation as well, who maybe didn't quite realize what we were going through at the time, because we weren't their generation, but we weren't quite exactly British either. So we were kind of that in between sort of. We were Schrodinger's British Muslims. You know, it was just very, very interesting time. So yeah, I think people are quite surprised about the things that I went through, because, but this is the only medium to write them in, right? These stories, these uncomfortable stories, aren't suitable for a stand-up stage. And so, but I still wanted people to know about them and stuff.
One of the most, I mean, there's so many moments that made me just stop and think about it, because it was like a little light bulb went on in my head. I'm like, oh my God, that was like totally true for us. But sometimes you realize something, but somebody has to articulate it for you to really recognize it. Was a moment when you said in the book about your mom that you'd never really asked her any personal questions, which, isn't it crazy if you think about it? Like, not asking the person who gave birth to you and raised you personal questions, because that's also kind of the silent rule in the way we're all raised, at least in South Asian communities. I don't know about other kinds of families, but which made me wonder, and we only as an adult have I felt comfortable asking my parents like personal questions, like, tell me what you went through, I want to know about your experiences, right? But as kids, it was just like, there was like this arm's length distance. You don't ask those questions. I'm wondering, how hard was it for you to be authentic in the book, knowing that your family might read this book?
Very difficult. I remember when the book was commissioned, and I had to tell my mum that I was writing this book, and I kind of had to pluck up the courage, weirdly enough. And I plucked up the courage and I told her. I remember she was standing in the kitchen, just doing something, and she just kind of stopped, and like she kind of smiled, and then her smile faded, and she went. And I told her when the book would be set, between this age and that age, which meant these years. And she just thought about it for a second. I went, but those were really hard times for us. And I was like, yeah, they were, Mum. They were really hard times, but I'm going to do it if that's okay. And then she said, yeah. And every time I wrote about someone in the book, I kind of let them know about it, and I let them read those entries and ask them what they think about it, because there's sometimes feelings that I'm saying out loud for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, feeling insecure around my cousins. They didn't know that. Growing up, they didn't have a sense of that. And so they reading that for the first time and going, oh, we had no idea. Like, either we had no idea you felt like that, or that we made you feel like that and stuff. So that was really, really interesting, like the discussions that we ended up having afterwards. And my dad being my dad, he's a very cool, chilled out guy. But, there were things that I went through in the book that he had no idea about, because he didn't raise me. So when he read the first draft, he sent me a text just going, I thought this was meant to be a funny book. Why am I in tears? So and then I had to go through with my mum all the things that I talk about my stepdad and all those things that she went through and stuff, because some of these things, they're not necessarily my stories, right? So these are things that happen to other people, but I was witness to them. So they needed to be comfortable for me to write them. And so there was a little bit of negotiation with my mum about what I should and shouldn't include, and I had to soften some of the language around my stepdad, which I agreed to do. And then also legal, when you're publishing something, the lawyers who work for the publishing company, they get involved, and they're like, well, you've written all this stuff. I mean, not disputing it, but we're just letting you know that maybe you want to temper your language a little bit, or you maybe want to put the odd disclaimer in there, or maybe,
right.
Yeah, so change some names. A lot of names have to be changed. So yeah, so it was.
UK laws are tougher than US laws. I know, because our edition, my UK edition of my book had to be changed because the lawyers there were much more nervous about getting sued, basically.
Oh, really? Yeah. So it was interesting talking to my family about that, but they were all very, very excited about it.
Have they read it?
Yeah. My sisters have read it. Because my mum's not read it, but my dad's read it, and anyone probably comfortable with the English language has read it. So, so my mum speaks English, but she's not super comfortable with reading and stuff, but or at least not reading a whole book anyway. Right. So but yeah, they've read it, and they really, really like it as well, which is great.
It's interesting, as I've been writing my memoir, also like doing the same kind of negotiation where it's like, this is stuff I've never told my family, like the people you should be closest to never know. But even things that are so ridiculous, and this also stood out to me, was a story about how I'm just thinking about like the things that we hide from our family, that you got hit by a car.
Yeah.
And you get hit by a car, you pop up, all you're thinking about is like your snack, which is like under the car. And you're thinking, oh my God, like I'm gonna get in trouble for getting hit by a car. I can't can't tell my parent. Like I totally understand that feeling because I remember once as a kid, I got injured in a way that like one of my fingernails came completely off, and I was bloodied. It was like I was like bleeding all, and I was like, I gotta hide this from my mother, she'll kill me. But what was that?
You're right.
What was that? Why?
It's like, how dare you get hit by a car? Do you know what could have happened to you? What if you got hurt? I'm getting hurt right now, Mom.
It was such a weird, like unnamed fear. And I think that's probably the first time I've seen somebody else express that. I'm like, oh my God, I totally get that. Because it's like, if you're going to end up getting smacked.
Yeah.
For getting hurt.
Yeah. It's mad.
I think we all have like those similar experiences, right? So, you know, in our house, we had a bit of a leaky bathtub, and our mom would always say, don't take a bath there. You can take a quick shower, but don't fill up the bath. So, of course, I didn't listen and decided to do it anyway. And then my aunt just needed to use the bathroom. So I'm like frantically trying to, you know, clean up this mess, but then I slip. Then I quickly get changed and I open the door to hear my aunt screaming because I smashed it open and there was blood pouring down my face. And I was just more concerned about the water on the floor and how much trouble I was going to get in.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely, you just open the door like Carrie. Just.
Another thing that I felt deeply, and actually Solat pointed this out to me too, was the fact that you said your favorite meal is dal chawal. It must be a Punjabi thing. I love my dal chawal.
My mom's dal is incredible.
Listen, wow, Rabia. We had a dal Olympics this summer here in the DC area, and I won it because a Punjabi can cook dal.
Wow. That's impressive.
Wait, what's your favorite dal though?
My mom makes this mixed race dal where she gets the red ones and the yellow ones.
I love how you just describe as the red and yellow ones.
Yeah. So
do you cook at all? Do you cook?
No. Rabia, I'm very much a victim of the patriarchy here.
Yeah, a victim.
You know, I grew up with my mom doing everything. Yeah, I mean, it's too. I mean, I will do that for my kids, inshallah, and when I have them, but it's too late for me now, Rabia.
You can't learn to cook the red and yellow.
You can't teach an old dog.
If you ever come to America and you do the book tour here, we're gonna teach you how to cook red and yellow dal.
Okay.
Yeah, I promise that.
Go ahead. You know, for the people who don't know what dal is, it's lentils and stuff, which is a staple. I guess.
Do explain it to them so like they can get it. They can make the leap.
Oh, okay, it's true. But you know, I think dal and chawal is definitely more of a Punjabi thing. You know, our favorite, my favorite food is biryani. So you know, you guys can laugh at it.
I'm much more of a pilau guy than a biryani guy, and I get into a lot of trouble for this online. Give me a meat chana keema pilau over biryani any day of the week. Thank you very much.
I stand witness.
And twice on Fridays. Thank you.
Do you know, in my book, which is a memoir about food, fat, and family, I have declared that pilau is the king of rice. It's simple as that. Yeah.
Well, that looks absolutely incensed right now. She is raging.
I mean, listen,
someone unfollowed me online. Someone unfollowed me on Twitter because I said that pilau is better than biryani, and they like unfollowed. And I thought they were joking, and then I went there and they had unfollowed me.
Listen, my husband's family is from Karachi. They eat biryani 3 times a week, so I understand. So it's like a childhood trauma. They just they've experienced.
What can I do? You know, old habits die hard. But I've actually had your dal, and it's absolutely amazing. Rabia is one of the best cooks, you know, I know. So I gladly go and eat at her house any day. So
sweet, thank you. All right, I want to, as we're nearing close to the end of our, actually talk about where you are. One of the things that really a line that really struck me was hold on, let me just I just want to actually read the line because I don't want to get it wrong, because it kind of broke my heart when I read this. It was you were talking about this slew of like attacks that was happening. There were like different bombs and people getting killed on doorstep, and there's a number of different things. And you write here, oh gosh, about another bomb that happened in London. 3 people had died, including a pregnant lady. And then you said, I'm so angry. I hope they catch this evil guy and execute him. I hope they lock him away forever. I'm so glad that Muslims don't behave like this, bombing innocent people. And I was like, oh my gosh, that line made me realize how much of our innocence in so many ways for a lot of, and you were much younger than I was when 9/11 happened. I was 21 or 22. How much of our innocence was taken away from 9/11, even about our own people. So that line you put in there, which is like about halfway through the book, that definitely was,
and that's a bit of hindsight, right?
That's right. Like you were like it was foresight or whatever it is. Like you were,
foresight. Yeah, sorry,
yeah. Foreshadowing. That's the word my editor used. Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Like how you went from there to then basically having to or to understand what happened on 9/11.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy because when the Soho bombings were happen, which by the way happened the same month as Columbine massacre in April. What a mad month that was. I remember just thinking, well, we don't behave like this. Like, who's this evil guy doing these things? Because we don't do that. Even though there were suicide bombings happening in Palestine and Israel, I guess, but they were happening overseas, right? They weren't like in my face, whereas this was happening here. And we had a history of IRA bombings in the UK as well. And then this was happening. So it was, and I remember but on 9/11, my mum was in slight denial about it all because, I think there's a lot of Muslims were actually just going, but we don't do that. Like Muslims don't bomb innocent people. So therefore they want Muslims. Therefore we've been set up. And there was that sort of thing, people trying to rationalize what happened into some sort of conspiracy because we don't do that. Like we don't go around because it's very clearly stated you don't kill innocent men, women, and children. And so therefore these people can't have been Muslims who did that because they know that as well as we know that. And so that's why I wanted to put that in because what's coming around the corner is 9/11. And so it was a line that I borrowed from my mum, which she said a couple of years later.
Wow. What I just had a thought when you were talking about that, and now it slipped me, but it was really important. So let me see if I can find it. In the meantime, Solat, if there's anything you want to follow up. Shoot, what did I want to ask you about?
So, as this book ended at 18, will there be a follow-up book describing your journey in becoming a comedian?
I think my university years should be kept locked and hidden in the darkest trenches of the ocean. And not to be shared with the wide. No, I don't know. I haven't spoken to my editor about that. I think what I went through at university was also very, very interesting. I was speaking to a friend about this recently, and what we'd, like this whole new language now that people speak that we've learned online, like microaggressions and toxic this and all blah, 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 and all this. And a lot of it annoys me, if I'm honest. But there were so many things that we ignored when we were at university or you get to call college when in the early 20 years ago, that now we would call microaggressions and all that sort of stuff. And we just, for an easier life, we just ignored them. Like we knew these things were happening and we noticed them, but sometimes for an easier life, you're like, there's a certain amount of things I can just let slide. Whereas I think if I was going through the exact same experience now, when I was going through those university experiences in 2021, I wouldn't have had as good a time. Ignorance is bliss, right? So you just you just let things slide. People weren't as hung up on things as I think they are now, or it feels like they are now anyway. And we kind of just let things go. And like I had friends, like very good friends of mine throughout university that constantly committed what we'd now call microaggressions, but just for an easier life, innit? You let things go. And I'm kind of glad I went through my university experience then as opposed to now.
I agree with you. I think it's much harder because there's almost a demand that people identify and then vocalize every single oppression, big or small. And it's like it just feels like our kids are just like they're being trained to always look out for like the stuff that's
it's puritan. I find it quite puritanical, and I'm like, where's the resilience? The amount of resilience we had to we learned and had to build up and go through. Like these kids don't have it because they're constantly told like notice everything, be annoyed and offended by everything, and then also let everyone know, like a little grass, like a little snitch. It's like just chill out a bit, man.
Okay, I remembered what occurred to me as you were talking about that 9/11. So I know you're wrapping up solo, but can I just go ahead and ask it?
Oh, of course, of course.
What I wanted to say was what I really, really appreciated was, because I don't even know if I've been able to do this, because I'm so, I feel scared and protective. I'm also embarrassed at some of the reactions that you shared in the book after 9/11, which was like, you're right. It was the whole gamut. It was like, it can't be Muslims. It's a false flag operation. Osama bin Laden is a CIA operative, to, yeah, it was Muslims in America had it coming. Which is, you know, you shared that reaction from some of your family members were like, well, not, it wasn't that they were happy. It was like, they're like, oh yeah, well, yeah, why not? You know, type of thing. And I have never been able, and it's true, it happened in my family too. There are people in my family, but I was so ashamed of that reaction and also horrified and mortified like you were. But also I don't want anybody to know that I got people like that in my family.
Yeah. That was the guy I had that argument on 9/11 was my best friend's dad.
Wow.
And we just got into this sort of like, not like a shouting match, but like just like a discussion. I was like, what are you on about right now? Like, are you like, no? Yeah. And he was like, well, yeah, they deserve it. Why, you know, if you go around being a big bully, then eventually don't be surprised if that comes back on you and stuff. And it's just, yeah, just a very, very interesting way of looking at it. And you know, I'm not even completely unsympathetic to that viewpoint, right? It's like I don't agree with it, but I'm like, I get it.
Yeah. I get it too. I think a lot of us get it. I want to say that I was really hoping we would learn more about your, like you, I'm a failed doctor as well. I was supposed to go to med school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I did 3 years pre-med. And then I was like, I can't do chemistry, so this is not happening. But it was a courageous choice from our community for you to decide to become a comedian, and I would have loved to read about that in the book. So I hope.
I love the way you described that, like it was a community decision, and they all decided, fine, we let him do that, as opposed to me burrowing in London, having no one to answer to. I'm just going to do this, and no one's going to find out.
Yeah, so that's how it happened then.
Yeah.
Okay, and your parents, I mean, like. But what was there an expectation that my son's gonna be a doctor? Was that like a thing in your family?
No, it was, I think, I mean, it's possible that my mum incepted this idea into me when I was sleeping when I was a kid. But as far as I'm aware, it always came from me, the idea that I wanted to be a doctor. Like that ambition always, as far as I can remember. Yeah. And then, you know, I failed my A levels, which is the exams you take before you go to university. Yeah, I know. Look at Solas looking so disappointed. Even 20 and a half years after the event, you look so disappointed. But I ended up falling upwards into one of the best universities in the country, even though I did a course not as good as medicine, but the university was incredible. And I would never have gone there if I didn't fail my A levels. So I got really, really lucky. And that university is what shaped me into what I am now, because I ended up hanging out with middle-class white kids and working-class white kids. And basically, it was in an environment that I wouldn't have been in if I'd gone to a university like Manchester, because I just would have hung out with other Desis, right? Because there were loads of them there. Whereas in Lancaster, there were barely any Desis. So I was forced to, and I'm a very sociable person, so I still wanted to make friends. So you make friends with whoever's around. And that is what expanded my worldview, broadened my sense of humor, and basically changed me into the person that I am now. Kind of that set the foundation for the rest of my life.
We are thankful for that failure and for the working class kids in the university.
And it was interesting, like when I was writing that down, and I remember how low I felt that week, and just thinking about, oh yeah, but look how well that worked out, and there's no way you could have predicted that back then. And so I think about now and the things that there's failures now, there's constant rejection in this, you know, working in media. So there's constant rejection and constant things that you want commission that go so far and then get knocked back and stuff. And you're like, well, yeah, that's
my life is a round of pitches.
Exactly right. So I try to remember that and I think, well, this happened, these failures, these rejections, whatever you want to call them, are happening for a reason, and inshallah there'll be something better. But even if not, whatever's written for me will come for me.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for this conference. Listen, I'm holding up the book again. Everybody needs to buy it, and then when there's
they need to review it on Amazon too.
Yes, please. Yes. Oh, yeah. 5-star reviews. Yes. Anything less than 5 stars, keep it to yourself, please.
It's already very well rated, by the way, but I've rating and I'm going to do it, and I love it. And I'm going to actually give this to my both my daughters to read. I think they're going to love it. So thank you so much, Tez.
Thank you. No, thank you guys for this interview as well. It's interesting for me because it's a very British story, right? So it's interesting for me how that then translates to the Desi community in the US, which is different but parallel. So it's very interesting.
I really hope you get to do some events around here. I would love to like help organize something in the DC area. We could get a lot of people there. It would be so much fun. So think about
That'd be really cool. That'd be
really
cool.
I mean, I've seen you on tour. It's honestly, it was hilarious. And you know, Rabia, he had crazy fans chasing him afterwards. Let's not forget that.
Oh my God, yes. The security guy helped us around the corner, didn't he? That was so funny.
So yeah, I think other people in this country need to have an opportunity to see Tez Ilyas and doing his comedy. And it's amazing.
And to become Tesbians, right?
Yes, for sure.
Haram.
So everyone go and check out this book. Definitely get yourself a copy for Christmas or whatever holidays that you celebrate over here.
They make amazing ironic Christmas gifts, right?
They do, yeah.
And please follow Mind, Body and Soul Sisters. This is, sorry, I have to do my picture at this point. And this is where I'm going to be posting this interview. And, thank you again to Rabia and Tez for joining me. And this has honestly been so much fun. And I think we could have just kept on talking, but Tez has to get to a show.
I do. I have to drive 2.5 miles to Leicester. 2.5 miles, 2.5 hours, sorry. 2.5
oh
miles.
my God.
I could walk that 2.5 hours to Leicester. So
have a great show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. This has been one of my favorite interviews that I've done around this book. So thank you so much for making it very easy and pleasant. And also understanding, right? So I feel like you understand the intentions through which I wrote this book as well. So I appreciate that a lot.
Fantastic.
So Rabia and Tez, I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon, especially when Fatty Fatty Boom Boom comes out. I'm sure Tez will have a great time discussing that with you, Rabia.
Yeah. Good luck with that. I can't wait.
I'll send you both a copy. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.